Hello friends, welcome to the California garden in the beautiful city of Irvine in Southern California. In today's episode, we will take a garden tour. We'll look at what's growing in the California garden this month. We'll look at some harvests we made, and we'll look at some things to do this month, and then we'll look at some cool gardening products for you. So let's take a tour of the garden. In the first bed, we have the small bulbing kind onions, and these are grown for their greens. So we will be harvesting and using these greens as needed. The bitter gourd plant has grown pretty large, and it has been one of our best producing plants this season, and it has produced a lot of bitter gourds. This bed had the cluster beans growing, and now it's time for this bed to be prepared for some winter vegetables. Next to that, we have the hyacinth beans. We saw that in the previous month video. They were small plants, and now they're producing a lot of hyacinth beans, as you can see here. Right next to the hyacinth beans, we have the okra plants. The okra plants have grown very well in these hot temperatures. We've had very hot days this September, and now of course it's cool towards the end of September, but we had a relatively hot month this September. So the okra plants grew really well and produced a lot of okra. And right next to that, we had the summer vegetables growing. We cleared this bed. We now planted cilantro at the back, and we're going to be planting some brassicas in this bed and maybe some garlic for the cool season. Right next to that bed, we have some more okra. And these okras had also grown very well, and as you can see here, still producing some okras. They will be producing a little bit maybe for this month, but I might plan to remove these plants this month. And as you can see here, the chilies also have slowed down production now that we are entering the cooler season. The tomatoes grew very well. I think it was a good idea to plant them in July. June is actually better for the second crop. And as you can see here, the celebrity tomato is loaded with tomatoes right now. And the interplanted basil as well has grown very well. The other two tomato varieties did produce tomatoes, and we'll look at that in the harvest section of the video. It's again slowed down a little bit, but we'll see how it goes this month. And this concludes the tour of the raised beds. And now let's look at the containers. We have the pineapple plant growing as usual. The pubescence pepper did produce the peppers, but I'm not very happy with what was produced. So I might just remove this plant and plant something else. The painted hill corn is growing very well, and hopefully I'll get to harvest some corn next month. As you can see here, they are producing some good ears. This is the whiskey barrel container where I planted some white radishes, and we'll see how that goes. This is the ivy gourd plant that I discussed in my previous video, growing pretty well. The fruit production has slowed down, so it will still produce some flowers, but not as abundantly as it did last month in the summer season. You can still see a few fruits here that are growing and doing well. And this is the bush hyacinth bean, once again growing in the whiskey barrel container. Looks like it towards the end of its production, so we'll see what to do with this. On the back containers, we have the lemongrass, the curry leaf plant. They are perennials, they grow pretty much around the year. And then next to that, you can see that the chili plant is now slowed down production as well. And next to that is the tomato plant that will be removed soon. The mint plant has now taken off after being trimmed. And that's the mulberry tree on the back. The Malabar spinach right next to that. The tomatoes, as you can see here, still has the spider mite issue. The one at the back, the container. And the pineapple plant, this is the other one that we planted. So this is also growing pretty well. That's the Malabar spinach. It's trying to use the support that we provided. The curry leaf did produce a lot of seeds, and right behind that is the Meyer lemon plant. And the strawberries are now not producing much because they produced in the spring season. And we also now have some plants on our shelf. The shelf that I discussed in my previous monthly video, which is a great quality shelf. I'm using it for starting my seeds. And as you can see here, I've used some aluminum trays where I have my seed starter kits. And I also have this seed starting greenhouse, which I will review in today's video. And as you can see here, a lot of plants growing. We have the basil plants, 2 varieties of perennial basils, and we have some seeds that we started. And I will talk more about this when we look at the things to do in your garden for this month. But overall, this area of the garden has a lot of these small plants and small containers that are much better organized on this shelf rather than just laying around, all over the garden. And now let's look at what's growing in our garden this month. We have the ivy gourd plant that is growing. We reviewed this in detail in our previous video, and as I mentioned, it's still producing some good fruits. Next we have our fruit trees. We have the Dancy tangerines that have produced a lot of fruits, and right next to that we have the Mexican guava plant, which is also producing well. And the tomato varieties that we are growing right now are the Cherokee Carbon and a couple more tomato varieties, out of which I really like the Celebrity tomato. That's growing pretty well, and it's the best producer so far this month. And then we also have the giant German Queen tomato producing very well. The Moringa plants are now towards the end of their season, but they have produced a lot of good leaves and pods that we will see in the harvest section. The Thai basil that was interplanted with the tomatoes is growing well. And finally, the Rajapuri bananas, the dwarf banana plant, is producing a lot of bananas, and hopefully we'll be harvesting them soon. And now let's look at the harvest we made this month, beginning with amaranth. We did harvest a lot of amaranth. Now I did not specifically plant amaranth, but we did get it from various parts of our garden in the raised beds, and it grew from last year's seeds. Next we move on to the bitter gourd harvest. Now the bitter gourds are a very healthy vegetable, and you must read about the health benefits. It's extremely healthy, and our bitter gourd plant was one of the heaviest producers for this month, and we were able to harvest a lot of bitter gourds that we ate, and we also shared with our friends and neighbors. So a lot of bitter gourds that were harvested from this plant. And moving on to the cantaloupe that we harvested, or the muskmelon as it's called in some parts of the world. This is a lovely fruit, and they are extremely sweet. Now this cantaloupe variety produces small sized melons, and as you can see, homegrown cantaloupes are just so amazing. They look nice and they taste absolutely sweet, and it's a pleasure to grow them in your home garden. So do try out growing cantaloupes if you haven't already. We now move on to harvesting our chilies. Now we had the cayenne pepper growing for a while now, and we have been harvesting all the while from the late spring season to almost fall now. And as you can see here, the cayenne pepper is producing really well and still has a lot of peppers. Now after we harvest these peppers, we will trim these plants down and prepare them for the dormant season which is coming up, and hopefully overwinter them. Now moving on to cucumbers. Now it wasn't a great season for us for cucumbers, but we did harvest some white cucumbers that we were growing in our whiskey barrel container this month. And as you can see here, most of the cucumbers that we grew turned yellow pretty quickly, which is kind of strange. Now if you look at this cucumber, this is how the cucumber should be, but for some reason the cucumber matured very quickly. Now if you wait till this stage as what you're seeing here, that's too late. And moving on to grapes. We did have some more grapes that we harvested this month, and some of the grapes even turned into these raisins on the plant itself, and the sun just turned them into raisins. And if you look at the grapes here, there are a lot of grapes, and we even had some grapes growing towards the top, and I had to use a tall ladder to get on the top. And when I looked at the grapes, it was just amazing. There were a lot of grapes growing on the top part of the plant, and I was able to harvest most of it. And I'm slowly trimming the plant as I harvest the grapes. And as you can see here, these are a lot of sweet grapes. Moving on to the hyacinth beans, we had the bush hyacinth beans growing in this whiskey barrel container, and they've produced pretty well, and they are still producing. And the hyacinth bean variety that we're growing here is a bush variety, not the vining or the climbing variety. And this is the first time I'm growing this, and it's been an excellent experience. And we're also growing the same hyacinth bean variety in our raised bed, and we were able to harvest a lot of hyacinth beans all throughout this month, and it was a great month to harvest these hyacinth beans. And as you can see here, they look beautiful and extremely healthy and very delicious. The Moringa plant is a miracle tree. It's a superfood, and each part of the plant is just loaded with nutrition. And our Moringa plant was not only producing excellent leaves, green leaves loaded with vitamins and minerals, it was also producing pods. So it was time to harvest the pods. And as you can see here, the long Moringa pods, which you can see, can be harvested. And there are a lot of uses for the pods. And there are some excellent recipes you can make with these pods. The Moringa flowers are also absolutely delicious. Now, Moringa flowers are usually added to soups. And here you can see the Moringa flowers. They look beautiful. They taste amazing. And it's extremely healthy as well. And you can also use the Moringa leaves. You can dry them, you can add it to your smoothies, or you can just cook them raw. They're an excellent source of vitamins and minerals. And these are the pods that we harvested. Again, extremely healthy, very delicious, and they look gorgeous, don't they? And now let's move on to okra. We harvested a lot of okra, and we were harvesting okra almost every day throughout the month of September. And the reason for the excellent harvest for okra is the high temperatures. Now, whenever temperatures reach around 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the okra plants really take off. And we did have temperatures around that range almost throughout the month. And it even reached around 95 for a few days. And these are the conditions that okra simply loves. And we could harvest a lot of okra pods. As you can see here, beautiful looking pods. And they were growing very well in our raised beds. And here is one harvest, beautiful harvest, and the okra plants produced like crazy. And now let's look at the sweet potatoes. The sweet potato bed was one of the beds that was occupied for a very long time by the sweet potatoes. And as you can see here, we harvested some sweet potatoes, some really big ones. It was an excellent harvest. And here you can see giant sweet potatoes. Now we did harvest some tomatoes. The Cherokee Carbon is one variety that we tried for the first time this year. As you can see here, beautiful looking tomato. And this variety is actually a cross between the Cherokee Purple and a beefsteak, followed by the German Queen, which is another excellent tomato that we harvested. The German Queen is a heirloom tomato, and the heirloom tomatoes are one of the best tasting tomatoes. So overall, both of these tomato varieties were excellent and pretty large and gave us a very good harvest. And now let's look at the things to do in your garden this month. You can plant your garlic and onion sets. Now the garlic is a cool season crop, and if planted in fall, you should be able to get a good harvest sometime around spring. So plant your garlic starts like you're seeing here in this video. And if you have onion sets or onion plants, it's also a good time to plant them. I haven't started them yet. And you can also sow some cool season vegetable seeds. So you can direct sow radish. As you can see here, this is winter radish. It produces pretty large sized radishes. And you can sow them either in containers or in your raised beds. And I'm just going to be covering this with some cocoa coir. I already had some soil in this container, so all I had to do was really sow the seeds evenly and then cover them with cocoa coir so that they germinate under that layer. And you can also start some cool season vegetables like kohlrabi, cabbage, cauliflower, any brassica, broccoli, and this is a good time to do so. They will grow for the next 4 to 6 weeks in this seed starting kit. And then once they are ready to be transplanted, you can transplant them in your raised beds or in the ground. And now let's look at some gardening products. This month we have the Burpee self-watering seed starting kit for review. And this is available on Amazon and in your local hardware stores, your gardening store. And what it has is 36 cells for growing your seed starts. Now it does come with the seed starting blocks or peat moss where you will be starting your seeds. And it has some guidelines on what you can grow and how you can note down the progress of your growth and what you're growing. And it also comes with this mat, as you can see here, which actually wicks the water towards the seed starting peat pots. The bottom reservoir is where the water goes. So it's a pretty simple setup. It's just a reservoir with a mat that actually helps wicking the water. And then all you do is just add the water to the top just so that they expand to full size. And once they expand to full size, they will keep wicking the water from the bottom reservoir and then continue to expand. And then the wicking pad will actually allow the moisture to be taken up by the plants. If you're starting seeds indoors, you can keep a track of what you're growing. And as you can see here, we are growing some kohlrabi, some beets, some onions. Overall, this is a great solution to start seeds indoors or before you have space in your garden. And in just a few days, you will see that the seedlings have emerged, and it's a great way to start your seeds separate from your raised beds or the ground. So overall, it's a great product. I highly recommend that you use this product and you won't be disappointed. So there we have it, folks. That was our episode on the California garden in the month of September. If you liked this video, please do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you're not already a subscriber so that you keep getting regular updates. And we'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.